everything was destroyed, everything was burned. It was really traumatic for me because the stories were horrible.
You were seeing dead bodies, sorry.
We need to show to people what is going on. It's also a very, very hostile environment doing journalism, especially for women. There's a kind of hidden pressure within you being built slowly on you, and you cannot understand what is happening to you. Yeah, I have received many threats.
What is it that makes you every day get up and say, this is what I want to do with my life?
It's a very hard question and really painful.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Lack of Coverage podcast, where I'm interviewing journalists from every single country in the world. For episode 2, I'm joined by Serbeze Haxhiaj from Kosovo. Serbeze started out in journalism as a teenager around the same time that the Kosovo War began in 1998, which led to her becoming a refugee. Over an almost 30-year journalism career, her work is focused on topics such as war crimes, reconciliation, human rights, and corruption, all of which we touch upon in this podcast. Before we begin, a quick content warning. This podcast contains discussion of topics which some listeners may find distressing, including the topic of wartime sexual violence. Listener discretion is therefore advised. So I wanted to start with some of your experiences growing up and to ask what it was like to grow up in Kosovo in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, it was a really difficult time at that time. Back then, I have emotions, sometimes nostalgia, but most of the time, emotions and bad memories from that time. I had a very difficult childhood. I was born in a family when where parents were living separately because my father at that time was had been working in the Germany as a part of agreement between former Yugoslavia and Germany. So it was a generation of so-called gastarbeiters, and I
Mm-hmm.
was the eldest child in my family, and I had to take care, helping my mother with housework and also dealing with some work of mostly for men. So I had to work in the field. I had to deal with many things. So I didn't have much time for play. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to enjoy any games of my generation. While financially we were a bit better than my some of my friends, there are a lot of other bad things at that time.
Because in Kosovo in the 80s and 90s was essentially a parallel society, right?
Yes, when I started my first grade in primary school, in my classroom was still hang on the picture of Josip Broz Tito, the founding
Mm-hmm.
father of former Yugoslavia. Um, and as a child, I didn't understand. We at that at that time we were a bit separate with the Serb children
Mm-hmm.
who have a better building than us. But at that time in 1985, when I started the first grade, uh, it started the process of amending the constitution of former Yugoslavia at time. As a child, I couldn't understand what is happening, but very soon we will learn that this process would mean Kosovo to lose its autonomy within the federation. So, uh, 4 years ago, everything changed. So it was the start of bloody breakup of former Yugoslavia. So, because the constitutional changes led to abolishing of Kosovo autonomy at that time. So when I started the first grade, when I finished my primary school, before I finished my primary school, Kosovo autonomy was abolished under huge pressure and violence. And when I started my primary school, it was even difficult for me because at that time My father was badly injured. He had to have a earlier retirement.
Hmm.
At that time, it started a very difficult financial situation in my family, and I started the secondary school. At that time, it was the whole education system, pre-university system, and also university system started in parallel ways because after Kosovo lost its autonomy, we were excluded from the schools, from public buildings, and everything started to close for Albanians. And I started my secondary school in makeshift classrooms. I had to walk 15 kilometers per day, so it was
Really?
yeah, 7 or 8 kilometers one way to go to school, which were completely private premises. Sometimes there were living rooms, sometimes there were garages, whatever people had in their possession, they offered them for school, for parallel system at that time, which was partly financial from the diaspora help, which was not enough to keep a whole system alive. And yes, as I told you, sometimes we have to walk 15 kilometers per day, sometimes to avoid the main roads because of avoiding police control at that time. So my entire secondary school uh, was done in parallel system. So when I finished my secondary school and started university again in private buildings in parallel
Hmm.
system, Kosovo was just going to war. So was the time when after the war in Croatia, in Bosnia, it was the Kosovo's turn to be included in this bloody process of dissolution of former Yugoslavia.
And that was in 1998, right? The Kosovo
1990,
War
yeah,
began.
1998, 1999. And as I started my faculty in 1998. So that we finished only 1 year at that time, and I started to work as a journalist.
What was
Um,
it that drew you to work as a journalist? Was it something in your childhood that inspired you, or was it like the start of the war? You thought this is
uh,
something I need to speak
Some of
about?
my professor at secondary school put me in the contact with some editors. At that time, the main newspaper called Relinia Renaissance was closed, and it started to be published parallelly. And
Hmm.
it this time was called Buiku, which means farmer. Uh,
Okay.
with that name. And I started to cooperate with Buiku Farmer as a young journalist covering some issues related to education. So very soon the war was intensified, and before the NATO air campaign started, because a lot of atrocities were happening, I was at my home in western part of Kosovo, where I was born, and we had to be displaced in high mountains. That is a very um, beautiful part of Kosovo, beautiful mountains, which are in an area between Kosovo and Serbia.
Hmm.
But there was the main military base of former Yugoslavia or Serbia at that time, and we were under observation. And when our food ran out, we
Hmm.
had a month. It was end of April 1999. I We had to displaced in Montenegro as a refugees at that time. So I was a refugee and journalist working with in different topics related to the war and refugees, which was really hard time because my father was in hospital at that time and we didn't know what's happened with him because even hospitals were bombed by Serbian
Oh wow.
forces at that time. And for a long time, maybe 3 months, we didn't know if he's uh, uh, alive or not because you know that how it happened in war. There are a lot of rumors, which was scary. At the same time, I lost my house because it was burned uh, completely. So I lost all the pictures, books, everything I had until 19 years old. So
Oh wow.
um, I don't have any picture or anything in my first 19 years of my life.
And do you think how did being a refugee yourself kind of impact your reporting, like
It
inform your
was
reporting?
it was a really terrible feeling because we didn't know how the war will end. We know already that we have lost our houses, many relatives, many friends, and it was a really terrible feeling. Also, seeing people losing their family members, the others who didn't know. Where they are their children or seeing people wounded, the others dying from different wounds, also raped women and girls. So it was really traumatic for me. At that time I was working mostly with foreign journalists
Hmm.
uh, who that time were covering Kosovo War, and it was really a traumatic and period of my life, which also shaped my destination as a journalist. After the war, I started to deal with other things like corruption, organized crime, but also I remained focused in issues related to human rights, war atrocities, war crimes, and especially victims. So this was my focus for more than 2.5 decades.
Do you think that was informed by your experiences as a refugee yourself? Do you think that's why you wanted to cover things like human rights, looking at victims, is because of the situation that you were in?
Yes, because something happened or something was broken within me at that time. Because as a young student, I understood that something has changed forever in my country, in my environment. Because of course, it was not something quite new because for a decade before we were under huge repression. But war is something completely different, which has changed completely my point of view regarding the interethnic issues, war and peace. So, and then after studying literature, international literature, I started to study international law and peace and reconciliation, dealing with peace and reconciliation, even in my master
Hmm.
thesis. So has changed many things in me, especially being much more focused on human issues and not only in my on my people, Albanians, but also my other minorities like Roma, uh, Egyptian, Ashkali, or Serbs. So for long time, I'm dealing with the rights of minorities in my country because within former Yugoslavia, we Albanians were minority and we were so much suppressed. So Kosovo has less right and less beneficial within the federation, and it was the country where rights of all ethnicities were not equal. So uh, this has shaped many things within me and with in my mindset in general.
Mm-hmm. And what and after the war, you returned from Montenegro to Kosovo. Did you say in
Ye-
1999, right?
Yes, yes,
Uh,
in June 1999.
and what is it like for you emotionally? Like, how does it emotionally impact you returning to your country, having been displaced?
Oh, it was surreal to return from Montenegro alongside trails, mountainous trails in that border part between Kosovo and Montenegro. Because I was born in that part, which is not so far from Montenegro. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was something I couldn't imagine because everything was destroyed, everything was burned, and you could see still not only armed vehicle or everything that war left, starting from graves, mass graves, dead bodies, and everything was left uh, as it was in previous days before the NATO troops to uh, to be entered in Kosovo.
So
So
you were seeing dead bodies, sorry, when you were coming
yes,
back.
also that bodies because first it was dangerous to reach the houses at that time. They were burned out, but we didn't know which parts of the land was mined, or it was really
Yeah.
dangerous, and you could see also dead bodies burned in their houses because at that time many people left homes, but some old people also didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay, and what you could find, um, those dead bodies were mostly or belong mostly to the old people,
Oh yeah,
male or
I can
female,
imagine.
because mostly they strongly believe that if they will be at home, their homes will not be burned, and they believe that being old people, they will not be target of armed forces, Serbian armed forces or paramilitary forces. That was the reason that many of dead bodies found after the war were old people.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that, them not wanting to leave and yeah, kind of not expecting to be a target because of their age. And then it ended up being the complete opposite. That as you said, even your house was burned, right?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
yeah,
The entire,
areas where people.
yeah, and entire my teeny country was burned. No single house was saved during that time of when NATO was continuing its year campaign.
And what I think is really interesting about your work specifically is that a lot of the narrative around Kosovo, Albania, Serbia online and in the media is very divisive, um, perhaps understandably because of what people have gone through during the war. However, for you as a journalist and as a victim of the war, you've chosen in your work to show victims from all sides. So, yeah, I just wondered why you committed to reporting in this way, also showing Serb victims, for example, or showing stories of Serbians who helped Kosovan Albanians. Like, what was it that made you commit to reporting in a way that wanted to show victims of the war from all sides?
Interesting question, because sometimes when I talk to my colleagues from Ukraine or other countries um, involved in conflicts, we discuss this very important thing. It is very difficult to be independent, to be uh, impartial, and to be professionalist when your own people are suffering. It
Hmm.
was not so hard. Even today, more than nearly 3 decades after the conflict, I am sometimes judging from my circle or some of my colleagues why you are doing this, having in mind that what kind of atrocities um, Serbia has caused to our people. But I think it's very important. In many conflicts, media played a very important role, for bad or for good, in portraying war, or especially the suffering of people. So in this very difficult environment, I can say truly it's still dangerous environment for some topics related to the war. It is always something very healthy uh, to be to choose to be not only um, independent and to be professional, or but to live outside of the picture your ethnic emotions, your pain. It's not always because we above all we are humans. It's
Mm-hmm.
not always easy to do it, but when you are committed to do your work properly, and you are committed to fight against what we very often see as a professionalism versus patriotism. When you choose to be professional and to be impartial, you can succeed, despite the difficulties that you can face in your path or in your journey. Still, I feel alone in my home country, Kosovo, because there are not much of journalists who can turn their eyes to the suffering of other people, especially Roma people who suffered being or caught in between two fires,
Mm-hmm.
between Serbs and Albanians. So because in all former Yugoslavia countries, it's kind of culture of impunity, which is being reflected heavily in media and public discourse, which is um, your criminals are criminals, my criminals are heroes. So none of the country not only is so much willing to persecute its own people, but also media are not so willing to deal with things as they are and trying to have a comprehensive approach when it comes to, especially when it's come to human suffering and to victims. So for that reason, I'm saying that it is still a kind of hostile environment in all former Yugoslavia's country when it comes to reporting about war criminals or sufferings of the other side.
And what are some of the best interethnic stories of hope that you've reported on? Do you remember any stories where you thought this is an amazing, yeah, kind of, yeah, as I said,
Yes.
interethnic story of hope?
Yes, there are not so much, but still there are some bridges of communications left from the past, because it was long time since the two communities have lived separately and in deep animosities between them.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember some solidarity stories, Isaac. For example, how some Serbians helped Kosovo people during the war save their life, or were just facing paramilitaries or police or or army troops not to enter in a village, for example, where it was a mixed village.
They
Uh,
prevented them from entering the village, sorry, you said.
yeah, and
Wow.
also sending their neighbors to until the border to Albania, just to make sure that they will pass the border safely. So there were some Serbs who helped their neighbors. Not all the civilian Serbs or Serb residents were involved in war crimes. Also, after the war, I have reported on some very rare cases. For example, in a remote village, a Albanian man helping a Serb woman who was 92 years old. She was alone because her children went to Serbia to live, and the village was abandoned from other Serbs. So this Albanian guy was taking care of her in that remote village until she died. And I met this old woman several days before her death,
Oh,
and I
wow.
was talking not to her, but I was talking to my photographer in the room, and for a moment I turned my eyes to her, and she was kissing the hand of this man. It was something quite spontaneous moment when I took a picture of her um, kissing the hand of this guy, and 2 weeks later she died. So there were some very poignant moment, if can I say
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah.
which are good examples that can prove us that coexistence is possible. Reconciliation is possible despite the atrocities and which will divide us for a long time in this kind of culture of impunity that Serbia is maintaining. Still, I believe that people can continue to leave behind their past or to let down their the burden of the past and to see toward the future.
And yeah, that's a really good segue into what I was going to ask you next, which is about the future of the relationship between, yeah, different ethnic groups in the region. Are you hopeful for more dialogue, and also, what role can journalists like yourself play in increasing interethnic dialogue in the region?
My journalists like me can help, but not so much. So
Okay.
we can make a dent, but I think in this very troubled region that how it is now, Balkans, especially former Yugoslavia countries, um, it is hard to hope that the stabilization or normalization, because sometimes it's a kind of myth of normalization, because you know that Serbia doesn't recognize Kosovo and is
Mm-hmm.
trying to undermine its independence, its sovereignty. But Serbia recognizes Croatia, Bosnia, and the others, but don't doesn't have normal relation with them. So in this if I can say grim picture, it's little space for much hope, for a faster normalization or reconciliation in the region, because to be achieved this, first of all, the country that has caused so much atrocities, also genocide in Bosnia, should take responsibility, not
Mm-hmm.
only legally or based on international principles, but also to accept and to give a reparation for victims, and to accept its accountability, and to try to prosecute people involved in crimes. And Serbia is not doing this. So after the closed mandate of former tribunal for former Yugoslavia, ICTY,
Mm-hmm.
there are just few trials in Serbia underway, but none of them are completed for nearly 2 decades. So we don't see any significant step of Serbia to move from its bitter past and to deal with its past, because Serbia is afraid of a responsibility. And in this situation, it is holding other countries in a kind of tension and in a situation of which is potential for conflict or for further tension. So Kosovo, Bosnia as well, Montenegro, Croatia. So this is this kind of situation in all Balkans. EU, in the other time, is playing a very weak role in this aspect because it has not shown a strong leadership to push those countries to leave behind their past, to take, first of all, the responsibility for their accounts of for their past, and especially crimes committed, and to help them towards integration. So we still don't see this kind of much needed leadership. So in this situation, also taking into consideration very heavy hand of EU and US in some countries like Kosovo, and also a really big role which is playing Russia and its hybrid war in Balkans. I'm afraid that it will not be so fast, this kind of normalization or path to reconciliation in former Yugoslavia countries.
I I think yeah, that is obviously something that won't happen, quickly because there's so much reconciliation that needs to happen and attitudes that needs to change and also legal things that need to happen as you explained. But do you think that there is any change in attitudes among the younger generation in Serbia maybe towards Kosovo, or do you think that they're upholding the previous generation's attitude?
It's a very important question. It's like when it comes to young generation, it's something not so pleasant to say. Not only in Serbia, in Kosovo as well.
Hmm.
For my generation who experienced the war, it's a bit sad to say that the younger generation is becoming more and more nationalistic compared to our generation who has experienced the war. I remember very well after the war, during the war in Serbia, there were a lot of people talking for the atrocities, talking for Kosovo's independence, talking for what really happened during the Slobodan Milosevic um, regime. But in recent years, I see a kind of drastic change for wars of in among young generation who are becoming more and more nationalistic because this generation is being raised or being fed by political propaganda, a very high culture of impunity, and very high culture, strong culture of denial of the crimes. If you go
Hmm.
in the to Belgrade, in the center of the city, you can see with a huge letter saying the only um, people uh, um, who experience genocide are Serbs. So you can
Oh,
imagine
really?
this kind of yeah, this kind of culture or other uh, other propaganda phrases like, for example, Kosovo is Serbia, or when our army will return to Kosovo. There are a lot of these kind of messages who are feeding the young generation, and I see this generation is uh, is absorbing this kind of dangerous propaganda. In Kosovo, in the other side, also we see the young generation becoming more and more nationalistic. Not only because in the recent years we have a very nationalistic government, but because of the atrocities and because of the justice has not been served for many
Hmm.
victims, and because of this culture of denial in Serbia and the Serbia's attempts to undermine Kosovo's sovereignty, we see a young generation in 20s becoming more and more nationalistic, which is a really bad message uh, for our generation, because we couldn't create a better path for the young generation, to make them to see toward the future, not towards the past, and toward that dark chapter of our history.
I want to now move on to another one of, or one of, I think, what is one of your most famous, perhaps, and interesting stories, which, yeah, is something that maybe doesn't receive a lot of coverage in the context of war crimes. So it's about your investigation into children that were born as a result of wartime rape. I'd just like you to explain why you were interested in this story and also what the story was about.
Yeah, because Kosovo, as a society, has failed to document war crimes. I remember after the war, because of the great, because of first of all, because of the patriarchal society and many factors, other factors, um, made victims to be silent, especially wartime rape victims. After the war, in that very grim situation, it was the whole society was more keen on glorifying war. Kosovo didn't have army, but it has a guerrilla force, and it was much more focused in glorifying war and the freedom fighters, while the victims, because the majority of victims of the war were civilians,
Hmm.
uh, 13,500 people were killed, and most of them were civilians. So more than 10,000 were civilian victims. But civilian victims, especially women,
Hmm.
didn't have much or didn't have at all a space in public space, in memorialization space. And after the war, it was a kind of culture of denial of rape, also in Kosovo, because many people uh, couldn't protect their families. And it was put a great shame on their families, and for that reason, they abandoned their wives, or denied them as victims, and for a long time, those victims have suffered in silence. What is paradoxically true that Kosovo's state recognized victims of sexual violence very late compared to other categories of war. For example, freedom fighters who were killed during the war, or war veterans or invalids of war were recognized much earlier than the victims of sexual violence. So in this story, this part of this category of victims, which was a victim of a rape, which was used as a weapon of the war.
Was it
Uh,
by the was it by the army? Sorry, by the Serbian military, or
Yeah, Serbian military, police, and paramilitaries. This category of wartime victims of of rape were neglected, and it was thrown a blanket over them. It was thrown a blanket to cover them and left them neglected or marginalized. So for that reason, I wanted to deal with some pressing issues of the war, such are children born of rape. And I remember after the war, there were some reports, for example, when women killed their babies
oh wow,
after after they were born, because those victims were children conceived as a result of a rape. So there were really horrible stories, and I wanted to see nearly 2 decades later how those women have rebuilt their life. So for that reason, I wanted to deal with this this category of victims and this issue of children, because in Kosovo they are quite invisible compared to other conflicts. For example, in Bosnia and other Rwanda or other countries, in Kosovo you cannot find a single case when a mother can say, "Yes, this is my child born of rape." Some of them have abandoned their children. Some of them they gave them for adoption. Some of others kept them, raised them, but in silence, but not telling anyone that this was child born of rape. So
Did
I
the
want
children themselves know that
no,
they're
no, no, no,
no?
no, 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 no. You cannot find a single case when a child know himself or herself that is child born of rape, and also only mothers. This uh, secret is only among mothers. None of others know this. So I wanted to track some of the cases to try to find or to shed light this dark chapter of the war. So, and it was really traumatic for me because the stories were horrible. The
Hmm.
history of their life after the war was also horrible. Um, for example, the woman who she was very young when she was raped for a week in a village in northern Kosovo. She didn't know she was really young, and she didn't know that she can abandon her son. But she was afraid of being revealed, and she killed the baby. She
Did
was
you
kept,
speak to her, this
yeah,
woman?
but
Oh wow.
20 years later. Initially, after the medical staff revealed the case of, revealed that she killed the baby, she was arrested. She was kept in prison for 1 year, but she was released because the court ruled that she was not stable emotionally and mentally after the birth, taken into consideration she was raped. But she lost her husband. Her husband abandoned her. Her family also abandoned her. So she lost her. And 20 years later, nearly 20 years later, I wanted to meet her and to see how she lived, how she rebuilt her life. Unfortunately, I saw that trauma and everything has deteriorated her situation. So I saw no improvement in her condition. So she was in a really bad situation. So for me, it was a really traumatic moment to meet such a women and to hear their experiences, uh, very, very secret experiences.
I
And
guess that the emotional impact on you is
yeah,
very very big as a
yeah,
journalist.
I
But
think I have inherited a kind of PTSD because I see
mhm,
as the time goes by and as I growing older, I see this kind of burden, emotional burden on me because when I started, I was young, not prepared for dealing with such a very sensitive issues. I was not also so much um, trained as a journalist, let alone for sensitive issues, how to protect emotionally yourself. No, when I talk or when I hold lectures or trainings with the young journalists, I emphasize this issue because I underline all the time this issue to be careful with your um, mental health because based on my experience is really because this is a kind of second trauma um you face during those kind of very very sensitive things because there are not only terrible stories you can see or experience talking to them or meeting them, but there are also threats or other forms of pressure. For example, a victim said to me, "If you publish anything, I will kill myself." So
really.
it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of pressure on you because of course you will not publish anything, but you
Yeah.
know very well that she doesn't recognize you, she doesn't trust you, and you are afraid that even if that meeting, short meeting with her, can deteriorate her condition, and you are afraid that she can harm herself. That is, there's a kind of hidden pressure within you. You can be very okay ethically, professionally, but there are some things that are always beyond those rules, those written rules.
Do you
And then,
think that that burden builds slowly, that you don't really realize it at the start and
yes,
then it
exactly.
compounds?
Precisely, that is it is being building, um, being built slowly on you, and you cannot feel what is, or cannot understand on time what is happening to you. So it comes very late when you see symptoms, or you can see the clear signals or what happened to you. So in countries like Kosovo, it's also a very, very hostile environment doing journalism, especially for women, because um, media pressure of government in media was always high, and media were not always free to do their work. Kosovo is a small country, but um, very fragile when it comes to doing journalism, especially investigative journalism, like war crimes or corruption or organized crime, especially, and for women is double. Uh, this kind of difficulty is double. So yeah,
Why do you think that is, that it's also still a lot harder for women to do those kind of things?
because first of all, it is because of the uh, patriarchal roots that we have inherited for
Hmm.
centuries. Then it comes because of difficulties that life brings in such an environment, which doesn't offer so much stability, economical and social stability for women, especially women like me who have to raise children. So it is really hard. There are a lot of factors, but above all of it is that there are not free media, not a country which people can trust to rule on law. So this still weak justice system and a government that is always interested in keeping media under control, or to silencing especially those who criticize government, is always a huge pressure in this category of journalism, which is becoming worse and worse with social media and
Hmm.
this kind of situation of technology, when you can face much more cyber bullying. So in general, it was hard for me. Sometimes when I talk to young journalists, I am afraid that I give not so courageous, not much courage to them to do journalism, because sometimes I think I'm not a good example for them to follow a professional journey in such a circumstances.
I was going to actually ask you about that. I was going to say, you've spoken on the emotional impact and a kind of PTSD you've got, and the burden that you've taken on, and also the practicalities of, operating as a female journalist in a society which is quite patriarchal, and also where you have received, threats or online bullying. Why do you continue to do journalism? What is it that makes you every day get up and say, this is what I want to do, and the kind of thing that I want to do with my life?
It's very hard question, and really painful. Uh, when you have spent more than or nearly three decades in this uh, journey, in this profession, you have a kind of feeling, or you sometimes you feel trapped on this, not only because of passion you have for the journalism, but it's also a kind of feeling that if you really can do another job that is that is happening to me. Sometimes I'm quite not quite sure if can I do any other job after 30 decades being in a journalist and editor. So that is sometimes that you feel, especially living in a kind of this media market or this environment very small. It's sometimes hard to say that I am abandoned or I'm quit this job, but I think I have reached this I will reach this the decision very soon, maybe within months or year.
Oh wow.
So I don't know. I am quite not sure, but let's see.
I wanted to now speak about something else that you've reported on quite a lot, which you've mentioned, but we haven't really gone into, um, which is the issue of corruption, which you've spent a lot of your career doing stories on. Why did you choose to investigate the topic of corruption in post-war Kosovo?
Because you know that a country that has experienced so much suffering needed a responsible government and very accountable way of governing, and facing so much corruption and organized crime. You see that something is don't letting you breathe freely in this country after so much atrocities. So this was my motive, first of all, when I started to, because in recent years many people connect me to the war crimes or to issues dealing with the past or
Hmm.
transitional justice, but for a long time I have worked for daily newspapers in Kosovo. Also I have worked for foreign media, but I was focused in this issue because it was something that we need to show to people what is going on, how our money is being spent. So I wanted to, and seeing every day that people trust to me to give information or to um, be whistleblowers within their institution, I didn't want to let them alone or not to give them voice in indirect way by not publishing abuse abuse of power. So for a long time, I was much more focused in corruption, organized crime, because the corruption was something very endemic in Kosovo for a long time, and it's continued to be. So this is one of the main issues that is facing the country, and which is plaguing our country. So I decided to raise my child here, so I wanted to him to have a better place to live.
And what were some of the investigations on corruption uncovering? What are you uncovering in these investigations?
Uncovering or covering?
Uncovering, like, sorry, what did you find out in your investigations into corruption in Kosovo?
I have reported in many things related to corruption. Actually, if I can say, in those days, the main thing which cannot be investigated easy is the corruption and money laundering in construction.
In
So
construction.
construction, yeah, there is a boom of construction in last decade, and we see every day that money laundering from drugs and other dirty uh, jobs are being invested in construction, and it is very sophisticated uh, segment to investigate. While in the previous year there were also public tenders which were mostly abused at public money, and corruption was quite visible
Hmm.
uh, in many departments of government and other institutions like prosecution or uh, courts and other segments. No, this high high level of corruption and organized crime is in construction. So because people are so much connected to the powerful people in power. So that is the one of the most uncovered topics in Kosovo.
And do you think that that is connected to the legacy of war? For example, if a lot of buildings were
Uh,
destroyed during the war, or
yes, because like in other countries, after the war, there are some warlords, you know,
hmm
who became powerful and rich very, very fast by being involved in dirty job or getting or um, dirty money. So these people were connected to the power, and construction largely was also connected to this category of people. I am not saying that all of them are related to the war, to people, former fighters, but uh, a chunk or a huge part of this belongs to category.
hmm and but also with the fact that the buildings, if there's a lot of destruction, I guess, in the country after war, and a lot
Yes.
of houses and stuff are destroyed, I guess that means there's probably going to be more construction on rebuilding the country. So do
Yeah.
you think that, yeah, having do you think that's also why construction is used as an avenue for money laundering and corruption, because there had to be a lot of reconstruction of the country?
Yeah, in the first years of after the war, especially the first decade of the war, because 80% of the Kosovo villages were destroyed. So what was
80%.
yeah, 80%, because the burning of private houses were easier for military, while the public buildings or huge buildings were in some places mixed with the Serb inhabitants, and they couldn't destroy them or burn them. And they have saved, especially centers of the city in some parts of the country. But uh, almost 80% of the Kosovo houses were burned. Uh, During the and after the war, of course, it was a boom of reconstruction, and it was mostly with the help of international community. Corruption couldn't be so much widespread at that time because most of the money was managed by the EU and
hmm
donors. So it started with the buildings, built high buildings in the cities in the last decades, because in the last decades there were not so much legal infrastructure that can prevent them or help, or mostly it help them to continue this kind of business. And for that reason, this corruption, organized crime is so much involved or concentrated in this part of uh, of this part of corruption.
hmm Okay, and yeah, now I think we've spoken on a lot of the work you've done related to, yeah, war reporting, reconciliation, yeah, also interethnic issues, and now corruption as well. Before we finish, I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. The first one being, which of the stories that you've written do you think has had the biggest personal impact on you?
As you mentioned, one of them was the children born of rape. The others are related to solidarity and help between communities. There are others which are related also to war victims, to rape and to killing the children, losing all the children, meeting mothers who lost all the children. But also there are some uh, stories related to corruption, but I revealed um, corruption in 5 or 7 millions. You know, when you publish something that you can move out of pockets, move out of someone's pocket 5 million. It's not so easy,
hmm
especially if this guy is powerful or is in power. So it's not so easy. Or there were cases when I have to sit in a table with a person who was accused or who was suspect for someone who is still missing, and reading his face, his mimics, his way of looking at you, and how his body language speaks a lot. So there were some of moments for me very difficult, but also who left deep scars on me. So there are a lot of story, but those I can mention for the moment.
For example, when you're uncovering, you said 5 million worth of corruption, 5 to 7 million, right? In
Yeah.
one of your stories, um, do you like? Do you are you receive because this is such a big amount? Do you have fear afterwards of
Yeah,
threats?
of course, yeah, I have received many threats. I don't want to play the victim or sounds that I am victimized. But yes, I have received many threats, death threats, pressure in my workplace. I have faced a lot of ways of pressure and threats. I have also faced sexual harassment during my work. So sometimes my big battle was not outside with the people whom I I have reported or whose bad deeds I have exposed. My bad my worst battle was within my job place, was within my work. So this was my hidden battle and my most painful time dealing with the people who were connected to the people outside. That is what makes me different from the others. Is not what I have reported or awards I have achieved or the level of sensitivity or level of danger of things I have experienced. But what makes me different is lack of support inside of my workplace and my hidden pressure, my lot of can I say very, very, very bad things that happened me behind the doors.
And I guess that leads on to me to ask you, how has your career in journalism changed you as a person? What it's given to you, but also what it's taken from you as well.
It has taken from me so much. This is a profession. This is a job that doesn't have ranks, doesn't have you. If you are in a military or an academic level, you can be measured by titles or
Yeah.
positions. In journalism, you are just journalist. I am
Hmm.
editor also with public broadcaster, but I am a journalist. So this is a profession in tiny countries like Kosovo takes from you so much, takes not only time, energy, but also so much force from your emotional aspect or your mental aspect. What has given to me, maybe it I was satisfied with what I had done, not only awards or my position or my being a person who are known or within the country or outside the country, but if I compare with what I have lost, I think it's a huge difference in between.
So, Beza, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing some of your stories, but also the personal, emotional impact that this profession has had on you and still continues to have on you. And thank you so much for all of the great work in journalism that you do. And it was a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you so much for having me.